I was called a kangaroo because of my Indigenous heritage. I faced a lot of racism comments like, oh, your family must be alcoholics because you're Aboriginal, to being called the N-word by a student online. I'm a Gomeroi Yana, so a Gomeroi woman. I live on Wonnarua land. My father is from Gomeroi. He's Indigenous to Moree, Tamworth area. We didn't grow up around our culture. When my dad was younger, it was very hush-hush. We were told that we were actually Spanish. It was very much hidden from my dad. Like a lot of Indigenous families, Indigenous culture was kept secret for safety of children, so that the children weren't taken away or weren't treated differently because they were Indigenous. In school, I faced a lot of racism for about 2 years. I was racially abused by a teacher who would publicly humiliate me. It was a school carnival day and we were doing sport. He decided he wanted to make a joke about how I could throw a javelin because I'm, quote, an Aboriginal person. Those comments were constantly made during the day about how I should be able to jump high because I am Indigenous and I have some sort of connection to kangaroos and because I must be like a kangaroo. And those were all done in front of other students. This went on for 2 years. This teacher, he also had a fascination with my curly hair and would also frequently touch my curly hair. I left high school because of my mental health, because of the racism I was experiencing in high school. And because of that, I was so afraid of being in another education environment. I'm studying at Newcastle University. At university, I do an Indigenous Studies course as well. So I'm surrounded by other mob and we can have conversations. Because of what I went through, it really opened my eyes, and having conversations with other Indigenous people, I think it's safe to say most Indigenous people will face racism in an educational environment. So I think a lot more needs to be done, specifically in schools and in universities, to make people aware and educate people on Indigenous culture. I was involved in a Black Lives Matter protest that I organised. I became vocal about my Indigenous culture because of these experiences that I had. And because I went to school and I wasn't heard, I was known as the tokenistic Indigenous kid at the school. I felt outraged that a lot of people weren't listening to Indigenous people. My heritage is my life. I use TikTok to talk about Indigenous issues, try and educate people, to express my culture. I think it's also important for young Indigenous people to see other Indigenous people succeeding in life and expressing their culture in their everyday life. As a kid, I always wanted to have an Indigenous role model or an Indigenous Disney princess to look up to. I think a lot of people misunderstand Indigenous communities. People think that Indigenous people are lazy, that they're not hardworking, that we can't be academic. And I think that really needs to change. And I think those beliefs are all very harmful. I'm seen. Are you?